Now, our last speaker tonight, I like to talk about him because he's not just my rep, he's a fantastic rep. When you look through the news, you'll see one face out there in front fighting for us every single day in the legislature. You'll see him down in Athens, winning races down there that he shouldn't be competing in. You'll see him up in Henry County, helping first-time candidates like Elma D. Holly was a couple, half a dozen special elections ago, it seems like, win their races and bring some good representation. You'll see him up in Northeast Georgia, up in Northwest Georgia, helping those candidates get their campaigns running and challenging in seats that haven't been challenged in decades, and more than that, winning those races. That's what it's going to take to make the big changes we need in Georgia. And I am so proud and happy to have with us tonight the Georgia House Minority Leader, Representative Bob Trammell, who is in the race of his life. Bob, give us an update and tell us what we can do to help keep you under the gold dome.
Well, Chuck, first of all, thank you so much for that kind introduction and for your steadfast support for organizing this event. I want to thank the Coweta County Democratic Party and all the Democrats on this call. You know, I'm so grateful for all our Democratic candidates who are willing to step up and run in 2020, what is the most consequential election of our lifetime. But I want to say a particular thanks to Jill and Fred for taking on those legislative races in what is shaping up to be an oh so important race in 2020, where we literally have a chance to flip the Georgia House going into the 2020 election. My kids are 7, 6, and 2. Mary is my 7-year-old. Virginia just turned 6, and my son Bob is 2. This is the first election where I think that Mary and Virginia are really dialed in to what it means to participate in the democratic process and what elections mean. And I can tell you that as a father, I'm very concerned about our future. It's very concerning to me that for the last 4 years, I haven't been able to watch the news with my children because I'm afraid the President of the United States will come on and say something that I can't explain or defend to them why an adult would say that. I'm very concerned about the direction of our state. But the one thing that I can tell you is that one of the most exciting parts about 2020 is there a very clear contrast for every choice that you have on the ballot. And I'm very, very proud of our Democratic slate, starting with the Biden-Harris ticket, down the Senate races, all the way down to the local level. But what I want to tell you about just for a minute is what's at stake in the Georgia legislature. You know, for the last 6 years, it's been my honor to represent House District 132. And one of the fights that I've been honored to fight year after year is the fight to try to obtain coverage for 500,000 Georgians who could have coverage if we just simply expanded Medicaid, just like 38 other states have already done. Georgia remains one of only 12 states that has not expanded Medicaid, and as a consequence, our rural hospitals are more vulnerable than they've ever been. As you heard earlier tonight, 9 in the last decade have closed or announced closure. And in the face of COVID-19, these healthcare crises are more acute than ever. And let's be honest, the Affordable Care Act is in the most precarious position it's ever been in. Challenged by Republicans' Attorney General and this presidential administration, now with the death of Justice Ginsburg and a vacancy on the Supreme Court, and that challenge coming up to this term to be decided, another challenge to the Affordable Care Act. Overnight, the protections that millions of Americans and millions of Georgians have taken for granted under the Affordable Care Act for the coverage for pre-existing conditions could go away. So it's going to be vital that we elect candidates in 2020 that understand just how important and how vital healthcare is to our country, to our economy, to our families. When we go back in the General Assembly, we'll obviously have to talk about and deal with the consequences of COVID. And the contrast to the approaches between Democratic candidates and the Republican administration could not be more stark. We, at the very top, and the president. We have a president of the United States who chose to ignore and sweep under the rug COVID and the severity of it because he didn't want to cause panic and then jeopardize his poll numbers in the stock market. And we lost valuable time where we could have been preparing and addressing and confronting the pandemic head on. Here in Georgia, we have a governor who has chosen a route that has defied science at many times. And we have also seen a reluctance to do very basic things like mandating a mask that could protect and save many lives and that could help our economy as people have resumed confidence in going out and participating in the economy and going back to work just by wearing a mask. You know, last session in the General Assembly, I fought against a budget that took $1 billion out of our classroom, away from our teachers and students during the midst of a global pandemic, when they needed that money more than they ever have before to be prepared and to be safe. In this race, my opponent and the Washington special interests behind him are spending $1 million, $1 million to buy the seat. It's everything that's wrong with politics. My vote has never been and will never be for sale, because we've got to put people ahead of special interest. Finally, I just want to say this. If you haven't voted yet and you're listening to this, make a plan to vote. Help the candidates that you've heard from tonight and other candidates who are running. But I want you to know, and I want you to communicate with between now and Election Day, every voter that you come in contact with and every potential voter, this very important message. Your vote matters. No matter what the President of the United States says, no matter what anybody else tries to tell you, your vote matters. This is the most consequential election of our lives, and your vote is the most consequential vote that you'll ever cast. We must chart a different course for the future. And we have Democratic candidates up and down the ballot who are prepared to chart that way forward to us, to a positive future. Thank you, and God bless you, and do everything you can in the next 33 days to work, and encourage people to get out to vote. Happy to answer any questions if we have time.
We've got time. Bob's the last speaker for the evening. Bob, again, thank you for taking time out of your busy, hectic day with family obligations and running this tough race that you've got thrown at you. If there are any questions for Bob, go ahead and shout them out. And of course, no questions for Bob, because we all trust him, because he cares about us, because he's the kind of representative that everybody wishes they had. He's, like I said, I could not be happier with how I'm represented under the Gold Dome. We just need to give him a few more friends. So here's what we need.
I'll ask a question.
Oh, Jill. Yes, of course. Sorry, Jill, go ahead.
As far as Medicaid expansion, it seems like a no-brainer. Leaving federal dollars on the table like that. Bob, what is the argument that the GOP gives for not supporting it?
It's a great question, and the argument has sort of mutated over time. Initially, the argument was that the funding level the preferable funding level would not be there for very long, that it would go away. And that's proven over and over again not to be true. States, again, 38 states have expanded Medicaid. We lost out on the 100% funding for the federal, from the federal government for the 3-year period, but it's still being funded at 90 cents on the dollar, which is superior to the Medicaid rate that we get as the state for our regular Medicaid. In all honesty, it just comes down to crass politics. They didn't like the fact that came out of the Affordable Care Act, which was under President Obama, and they fought it over and over again, and they painted themselves into a corner. But the consequence of that was seen very severely because you can take a map of where COVID had a lot of the worst outbreaks, and the hospitals were overrun, where people were often the sickest, they had comorbidities, where they hadn't been to the doctor in a long time in many cases because they lacked coverage, and had catastrophic outcomes. And in part, that was due to a failure to expand Medicaid, where people had not had the same access to healthcare that they could have had if they'd had Medicaid expansion. So thank you for that question. I mean, I think it is a no-brainer. It's something that on a moral level we should have done. On an economic level we should have done, because it could have bolstered and stabilized the rural hospitals and been a real boost to provide jobs in the healthcare sector all across the state.
And as a follow-up, hang on, Fred. As a follow-up, in the news recently, Kemp has been in the news talking about, tell us more about him wanting to take the marketplace off the table for Georgians. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. That's part of a waiver proposal that he submitted. And basically it would take away what most people are using when they obtain the healthcare coverage on the federal marketplace exchange, and replace that with a very uncertain set of insurance that I hope that people have had the opportunity to submit comments. It's very, very risky proposition where we would be flying and charting a very unstable course, and it's certainly not a good way forward when it comes to obtaining healthcare insurance and protections.
I had a question on a different issue, and that is House Bill 1166. I'm sure you're aware that some of our local, I hesitate to call them representatives, but local members of the legislature have decided that our schools are getting too much money, and they want to limit that. Could you comment on that? And this is a referendum that will appear on ballots in Coweta and Fayette County.
So you'll have to help me with the House bill numbers.
Well, it's House Bill 1166. It was put on the ballot by Josh Bonner, Singleton, and some other character. I think he was from Spalding County. I can't remember where. But anyway, what it does is it caps funding for public schools by basically capping the amount that a person can be taxed in property taxes. He's taken that power away from the school systems and the county commissions. That's what this bill proposes to do, and solidify this tax base at a lower rate. It's a cheap, in my opinion, it's a cheap attempt to buy votes. You tell people, we'll give you a few bucks back at the end of the year if you vote for me, but at the expense of our students, our schools, and our communities. Do you know any more about that?
Yeah, so the property, the ad valorem tax exemptions for school taxes, they go through the local school board. I'm not supportive of anything that doesn't have the local school board approval. When it goes through that process to get on a referendum, then that goes to the voters, and sounds like that's what's done there. What I would comment on is that there's no question that in the General Assembly, we certainly have seen efforts, both with $1 billion cut, efforts to divert funds away from public school funding that have detrimental impact on education of our students, who are the future, not only for us as a state, but when it comes to the economy. I mean, that's the talent of tomorrow. So when we take money away, I mean, we're literally we're taking money out and not investing in economic opportunity that we will have from a workforce standpoint. in the future, and not that long, not that far away. I mean, 10 years is not far out.
And from a strictly pragmatic point of view, if we're not going to prepare our own technicians, our own engineers, our own doctors, and our own administrators and so on in this state, are we going to try to attract them to a state that has crappy health care from out of state? Are we going to try to drag them in from, I don't know, New York? I don't think so. We either produce the goods here, or we're going to be backward and forgotten.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say is that, you know, one thing that I like to think about in terms of Georgia is I like to think about Georgia as a talent magnet. And are we adopting policies that will draw people to Georgia where they'll want to come work, spend their lives, raise their families? And unfortunately, you know, in Georgia, a lot of times healthcare is certainly a prime example of that. But there have been too many times where on social issues, the legislature has put forward some regressive type social policy that just turns people off. And they think about Georgia in a way that Georgia is a backward state. And we can't do that. We very much need to look to the future. We need to be a progressive state where people want to come. They want to come to Georgia. And they want to live, work, and play here. And that's the type of policy that we need to make sure we're enacting. So thank you so much for those questions.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in here. Bob, so obviously, like I said, you're in a tough race. I know you said it probably a couple of times in there. What's the website so people can go and volunteer and help with those postcards or donating and getting those signs and all the things we need to do to keep you in Atlanta?
Yeah, so go to Bob, it's very simple, bobtrammell.com. And I just want to say one other thing. This party has been so good. And when somebody is, when they're spending $1 million in attack ads, both in television and digital and radio and mail, I want to personally thank every member of this county party that has taken the time to comment and say, you know, I support Bob Trammell, or, you know, that's not right. That's not who Bob Trammell is. And I want to encourage you to do that up and down the ticket in these next 33 days, because we are in for a battle. That's what it means to be a battleground state. And so, you know, do that, because people are watching and people are paying attention. Your friends, neighbors, and family trust you, and they trust who you know. So thank you for doing that, and just keep doing it.
Bob, thank you for all the work you've done under the Gold Dome for us. And we're going to make sure you get to keep doing that for as long as Jenny lets you do it.